and welcome to Elections and State of the Nations. This is a podcast powered by the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room, where we discuss issues around democracy. Today we are talking about lessons from the recently held Anambra State Governorship Election. On Saturday, 8th November 2025, the people of Anambra, in the Anambra as we call them, went to the polls to elect their next governor. However, this was the second term for the sitting governor, Professor Charles Chukwuma, who ran under the APGA party. The election was closely watched, not just because Anambra has often set the tone for some sort of electoral innovation, but because there was a lot of concern about voter turnout and the recent issues surrounding insecurity in the states. I recall that in 2021, there were several sit-at-home orders telling the people of Anambra not to go out and vote. And so when this year came, everyone was expectant to see what will happen and if there will be a change in voter turnout. So today, we have as our guest an election expert. He was also an analyst in the Situation Room set up in Oka for the elections. Join me in welcoming Mr. Austin Aigbe.
Thank you so much. What a great honor to be seated right here. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin, for honoring our invitation. So, you've been following the elections and even the democratic scene in Nigeria. What was your verdict on the Anambra State Governorship Election?
I like that word, verdict, like a conclusion.
Exactly.
Don't say too much. So, verdict would be peaceful elections.
Yeah.
Peaceful elections, by way of what we know about Anambra elections. For those who know Anambra, I didn't even expect that we're going to get it to 1% though. And maybe this is at this point, Situation may not want to take credit for certain things that happened in that election. But let me say it. I followed activities in that election up from 6 months to that election. And I saw some intervention that were carried out by some Situation Room members. And interestingly, part of what we didn't see, or I didn't see in 2017, I didn't see in 2021, where the way traders in market were mobilized. It was more like an horrific, hurricane movement in a way that level of intervention was so good. I've seen country misinformation and disinformation in elections in that state, but for this election, the way other entities supported by Situation Room now supported the other organizations who used to do counter defamation there. It was more like a back-to-back intervention. I mean, with all due respect, I think that Situation Room should take credit, maybe not 50%, but just take credit. If you like, call it 1%, but take credit for the peace that we saw in Anambra election.
Thank you very much.
And the turnout 2021 was around 10%. Doubling that number was not an easy task. And I think that Situation Room should also take that credit.
I agree with you. We through support from the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, we supported several groups to work in Anambra ahead of the election. And I totally agree that we should take some credit, and also to all the other civil society organizations who worked around voter mobilization and voter education. Well done to all of us. So what exactly were the positive developments on the day of election? What did you see out there on the field? We deployed observers as well as several other groups. You were part of the analysts in the Situation Room. What sort of trends were you hearing, and what stood out as a positive development on election?
Fantastic. You recall we were on a radio program just a day before the election, the eve of the election, and we were already talking positive. Because of what we were already getting from observers, the Situation Room observers and partners. And the way the serenity of the environment was, it was a bit very was silent in a way that it didn't look like previous election in Anambra State. On the eve of election of 2017, we knew the election was going to be terrible. On the eve of election of 2021, we knew election was going to be terrible. In fact, permit me to use the word in quote, it may not be in your dictionary, it was very, very terrible. Because the 2021 election was so weird that, let me go back a bit to 2017. It was in that election I first observed where ESN started threatening voters that if they come out to vote, they were going to die, and the slogan then was "Vote and die."
Yeah.
That was not an easy narrative. On the day of election, right in front of INEC office in Oka, were people who were supposed to be mobilized for electoral to take materials to the polling unit location, suddenly declined taking materials to the the voting stations. You know why? Because they were afraid that they were going to be killed. Trained ad hoc staff who were already mobilized just to go out and perform the duty started to backslide. INEC in 2017, which also happened in 2021, began to do training and deployment on the day of election. This was things that we didn't see in 2025. Everything, some people said that the training came late. I said, well, you didn't know. The training did not come late. The training was strategic. You didn't want to get to the point where you train people who will later not participate in the process. So getting closer to the election was so strategic, and I think Alec would have learned that fantastically.
I was just going to say that they took some lessons from the past to incorporate into this.
Yes. And recognizing that, maybe again to give the credit to the situation. I don't know why I kept giving the credit to. Because I saw when the INEC rec came to Abuja under the platform, I was privileged to participate in that meeting. It was a unique opportunity for her to say certain things she would never say elsewhere. And Situation Room told her, we got your back. Let us know. And all of us done very remarkably. And I think all of the lessons from previous election that went into this election actually prove that learning from previous election is critical. And support from civil society organizations to an electoral process, particularly to election management institutions like INEC, as it were, should be a thing that needs to be promoted as we move on in our electoral architecture.
What of the beavers? What of the use or the upload of the results from the beavers to the IRF portal? How did this fare?
In fact, one of the problems we had in our electoral system was in 2023. Elections was going on. INEC told us when you are done with voting, you go on the IRF and view your result. Civil society mobilized voters to the polling unit and thereafter to the online platform. After voting at the polling unit, suddenly the online platform had what is called today glitches. And we were later told, if you don't agree with the result, you go to court. Anambra election become a new model for us because the INEC chair said beavers will work. And let me give INEC this credit because I've been giving Nigerian Situation Room all the credit. Let me give INEC this credit. By 8 p.m. on the day of election, first in the history of any election anywhere, not even in an Osun election of 2022, not even a Edo election of 2024, not even in FCT election
2022
or 2022, that by 8 p.m. on election day, like 95% of polling unit results have been uploaded. This is what celebration. But again, in Nigerian context, where you celebrate that the next election, they will come and give you 3 days after upload. So we can get 100%. We can get 100%. And I think INEC going ahead to the FCT election of February of 2026, we must show 100% at least by 5 p.m. because the election actually ends by 2:30. Let's assume it takes you about another 2 hours to do what the things you need to do. By 5 p.m. you should have uploaded a result so that But heading towards the polling unit, the collation center, political parties and civil society organizations could have done the collation. So we don't have to wait for INEC to announce the result. Even though INEC has a responsibility to announce the result, but citizens would have collated to know the pattern and the direction of the vote.
Okay, so we've talked about so much the progress of these elections, what people did, stakeholders, management of the election, the technology that was used and how it worked well. These are seemingly very good improvements in the election. What exactly were the concerns? Because one of the things we raised in Situation Room's final statement was the unhealthy transactional nature of our elections. We did mention that we saw a very, very, very huge amount of votes buying and selling, trading on that day. What other concerns do we raise around this election?
Maybe it's at this time we have to talk about, I like the one you use, the word transactional. Again, vote trading is part of it. But the election is supposed to be, in the Nigerian context, a lockdown day.
Yeah.
There's the only movements are only allowed when you go into your polling unit. But on that same day, your report also said there were markets running as if nothing was happening.
People were playing football.
Playing football and all of that. But maybe it's at this time we have to then look at the dynamics. Do we need to really shut down the system for vote to happen? I mean,
before we go there,
okay,
what exactly was the motive in creating a shutdown for elections? There was something that prompted that.
Yes.
In the beginning. And I also think that every time we need to make an improvement, we should also revisit the initial reason for that.
So the reason for the shutdown, for creating a shutdown for a state election, was because voters will leave polling unit one to another polling unit or another local government. So a voter may have like 10 PVC, even though it wasn't PVC at that time, they had a voter card. They will move from one location to another, just voting. They have a way of using thinner to clean up, to wipe out the mark and go somewhere else. But today, it's no longer like that. So we have improved beyond that. That even when you have 20 or 40 PVC, you may not even use any. If INEC cleans up a system and there's a match between two names, those names are taken down. Sometimes, as INEC has said, only one may be retained, and that one may not be the one you have the PVC in your pocket. So that's why voters are advised to, as much as possible, avoid multiple registration, because you don't even know when the data go to the ages, it may not pick the one you like. So that was the reason that at some point voters move to stop those kind of movement. Can we create a shutdown?
A lot of people who also cause trouble on election day, that restriction doesn't stop them. What of bring people coming in from outside another state to move from one place to another to cause trouble?
So that's probably where part of this improvement. Yes, I mean, that is, you are going to a point where we argue about the 45,000 plus deployment of police. That do we need this number?
No, after we finish with what they concern.
Okay, okay. All right, because it's correlated. But so let me say that yes, it is true. Movement for positive reason, movement for negative reason. We are, although basically for the negative reasons, you see talks moving from polling unit, snatching ballot boxes and moving to another. But after that enforcement happened, it never stopped ballot box snatching until technology came. So it wasn't a shutdown that prevented those ballot box stuffing and snatching. Because we saw it up to 2007, when we had shutdowns. We saw it in 2011 when there was no technology, even though we were just beginning to introduce the permanent voter card. It was a temporary then. It wasn't a card at that time, but it was a paper that was used in that election. There was still ballot stuffing and there was ballot box theft. So those moment of talks didn't stop those stuffing and snatching. So we need to, like you said, we need to interrogate the technology. The introduction of technology into our electoral system did a lot of improvement. Even if you steal those ballot boxes, it will be useless. You cannot stuff it and bring it back to the polling unit. You see, the dynamics has changed. But many years ago, you take the box away, You then stuff with already prepared ballot papers. Then you bring back the boxes, and then they start counting with, under some supervisory environment. But that's no longer happening. It's not. We were in this country in 2007. Elections were still going on elsewhere. In fact, particularly in Ughelli in Delta State, election was going on in that part of Nigeria when announcement of results was made in Abuja. A declaration was made. But today, it's not happening. We have moved gradually from that period. But again, like I said, we need to interrogate it. In 2018 in Mali, you don't need to shut down the whole country to vote. People go about voting and then go back to their businesses. They go. It's even better so that you are seeing those who are moving wrongly and you see a huge amount of people in the ecosystem. You are not able to do the wrong thing you want to do. But if you have the roads are free, it actually creates an opportunity for the talks to even move faster.
This is debatable, but what else? What were the other concerns?
So, the other concern basically was that there was fear. Again, coming from 2021 election. The fear of the unknown in that election. The reason why you saw 21% was, if not for the role of mobilization of voters, it would have been less than 7%. But because of those mobilization, because some voters still told me that they were afraid, they need to wait. In fact, by 9 a.m. in certain areas, voting had not begun, even though there were electoral officials already present. Voters I spoke to said they don't want to come out now until they see that the tension is there. So by the time they saw that the tension was really cool, about 10 p.m., 11, you started seeing vote, and that's what increased the vote. If you had moved that voting time to 6 p.m., maybe we would have gotten to 50%. Maybe.
Okay, Austin, thank you for highlighting some of the challenges and concerns with the Anambra governorship election. And it was quite also instructive to say that there weren't a lot of issues around insecurity and things like that. Even the incidents of violence were also reduced because we highlighted in our reports, our final statement, where we got data from our situational partner, Impact Development Initiative, that only 35 incidents of violence were reported and 1 fatality. I think this is a huge improvement in our elections, and of course, the commendation also goes out to the people of Anambra. So, what other data did you have access to around the election? What other trends did you see coming out from this election?
The way you just talked about 35% fatality, incident of violence. Incident of violence, whether they were shouting at each other or something, because we have to call them incident, but I wouldn't call shouting an incident, but again, it's part of our normal argument anywhere we are. But let's take it. But I would like to take this further, which I think I'm going to do after now, to look at the incident of 2021 and then compare. Maybe that's where most of the conversation we're talking about now make more sense. But other things that came out is that voters generally refuse to share false information. Generally. Even though there were a couple of false information that popped up on the day of election. For instance, one candidate stepped down that morning of election. Another candidate was bribed, tried to bribe NYC officials. One candidate who literally did not even win the election eventually. By 3 p.m., we were told there was already winning in 6 local governments. Whereas we knew that by 3 p.m. on election day, people are still at the polling unit and not at the ward collation. So you can't even have got to the point of local government because you have to go through the counting at the polling unit first. You move to the collation at the ward level before you get to the local government. But by 3 p.m., they were already preparation. But in the Anambra, we refused to share those information. Those information did not create any tension. It just moved on. And that's something that is also commendable. Ahead of future election, particularly in 2027, there are fears that disinformation will be a big part of the trouble we're going to face in the election, particularly with AI content. But we saw the same content in Anambra. In the Anambra refused to share them. So what Nigerians can do is not to, you don't benefit from eating up the polity. And I think Anambra people has told us that there will be no need to eat up the polity for your own selfish interest. Whether you are an opposition candidate or you are an opposition supporter, Anambra State is their own state. If it burns down, those people who came to visit Anambra will return back to their state. Anambra Citizen recognizes that, and that is why I want to again give them the credit in the Anambra. Congratulations for the turnout. You could have done more for stopping fake news. Very important. And maybe just also they were concerned about persons with disability, which of course didn't quite where we observed, where I personally went to see on behalf of Nigerian Situation Room. I did not see any of those PWD information, and I asked specifically. I was told that the polling unit was not part of it, because part of the information I know is that there are certain polling units that have been designated, and those materials are there. I didn't see anything.
So they mapped the mapping prior to this time. So the issue is that reform is not a one-day thing. It's not a one-off event. It's a continuous event. And of course, we go up to FCT election in February next year. There's also Edo and I'm taking you back. There's also Ekiti and Austin State Governorship Election, all in 2026. And with what we've seen now, we hope to see a gradual improvement as we head up to 2027 general election, which is usually the climax, because at that time you're having elections in 36 states and the FCT. So police deployment, INEC deployment, everything is stretched to the minimum, to the maximum at that time. So now we enter police deployment. When we heard 45,000, and we engaged with the police on this occasion very, very well. We commend the commissioner who was in charge of the elections for this Anambra governorship elections for a very, very robust engagement with civil society. And we went into the field. Now, some of our observers observed that that 45,000 didn't reflect in a lot of places. What do you think would be the cause of this huge deployment of security personnel to Anambra?
You see, not just in Anambra State, I think it's important to talk about security deployment in off-cycle election and use that comparison. So first of all, that Anambra is a state where we're concerned about insecurity.
Yes.
Southeast is in the news for everybody knows the activities of on-gun men or on-no-gun men, whatever name you feel like. So that it was already tension. In 2021, ahead of that election, 2021, you see, I like to do this comparison so you understand why sometimes when you look at that number, you just say, well, there could be some conduit within the number, but I can actually tell you that it's possible that the police would have deployed up to 30,000, up to 25,000, but they told us for 5,000. This is state. If you say 4 observer and 4 police personnel, even though they told us 3 personnel per polling unit. If you do the math, 5,718 polling unit. If you put that 3 per, that's the half the number already. That's about 23,000 or thereabout. So because that's for just polling unit. Don't forget that there are rovers, there are stations, there are border communities.
Yeah.
So are you saying that the other number will not be used for the others? That's where I have a concern. Now let's not pay more attention to this number, because at the end of the day, part of the question was that the question that we were asked before the election, that will voters not be discouraged by this number? I actually think that it encouraged voters to show up. That indeed the environment was peaceful, whether you give the credit to the police or you give the credit to the citizens who refused to actually celebrate or promote those false narratives about ESL are coming and all of that. In 2021, maybe I need to also say this. In 2021, 2 days to election, I was in Oka when a voice note came to my phone. Boom. Leave the hotel now, or we are going to bomb the hotel. We didn't get such notice in 2025 elections. I may think that the people were supposed to do more. Yes, but I also think that the police did what they could do, but the people's security was more. It was the people who refused to do the things that were done in 2021 and of course 2007 that degenerated into the kind of conflict, the insecurity that characterized the 2021 elections. It was in that same 2021 election that INEC officials complained bitterly of attacks. But this time, no. I like to say, maybe not to give too much, not to play a lot of emphasis on the security deployment. I would love that we play emphasis on the peaceful conduct of the people. Whether the police mobilized 200,000 or 5 million, it is the police that has deployed. I mean, it is a state, whether I like it or not, is a state that was an obstacle, and the police needed to take care of all the boundary states, including Enugu, Delta, Benue, and many other states. You think half of that number from a polling unit security cannot be up to that number? I mean, these are the kind of questions I like to leave you with.
Thank you very much, Austin, for your thoughts on the police deployment. I think another issue was also the welfare of the police, which we raised in our statement. That's the situation statement on the election. And we have actually come to the end of this particular edition. As we head towards 2027, the message is clear. Every election is an opportunity to do better. And to Nigerian citizens, reform is not a one-day event. You need to keep engaging the process. And I'm just going to appeal as Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room that your continuous civic responsibility is very important to our democracy. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms, on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, and our YouTube channel. And to Mr. Austin Aigbe, thank you for all your thoughts. You know that you're one of our respected analysts, and we hope to have you on another edition of Elections and State of the Nation.
Let's do more. Nigeria prepare for 2027.
Until next time, I'm reminding you that democracy works best when citizens engage the process. Thank you.